I'm sitting having a beautiful breakfast, enjoying my beignets, and did I say that right? It's beignets, right?
Beignets.
Beignets. Welcome into Scoop City. I'm the Athletic Senior NFL Insider Dianna Russini here on the Toyota set on Radio Row.
And I'm Chase Daniel, played 14 years in the NFL, and I am at home.
Aw, don't worry, Chase. You'll be here in New Orleans soon. It's just getting started. It's just kind of a light warm-up as this thing is about to rev up, despite the fact that we got the Eagles in their hotel. We got the Chiefs in their hotel. They are on the ground. Media night on Monday night. So much going on. And then, of course, just as I was about to say, things are so quiet. So quiet. I'm sitting having a beautiful breakfast, enjoying my beignets. And did I say that right? It's beignets, right?
Beignets.
I need a little nyeh in there.
Beignets.
Beignets. We broke the story that Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. So I want to dive into all of that. And then Mike Silver, who has covered over 30 Super Bowls, he joins the show. I know. He has covered 4 Super Bowls here in New Orleans. So he's got stories for us, not just about what makes the New Orleans environment so great for Super Bowl week, but we dive into a little bit about what makes Patrick Mahomes so incredible in these big moments, and also what it's like to write about these quarterbacks that are unable to get over the hump, i.e. Jared Goff, i.e. Josh Allen. So we're going to dive into that in just a second, but let's get right to this. Here's what I'm hearing around the league. For the last few weeks, the Cleveland Browns have known that Myles Garrett has wanted out. But on Monday, he publicly put out, "I want out." So it was a surprise for a lot of people. I think Cleveland Browns fans are not as surprised. I think they've been reading the tea leaves and they've heard a lot of rumblings, around the team. But also the fact that Andrew Berry came out just a week ago at the Senior Bowl and he told us, I'm not trading Myles Garrett. And now just a week later, it seems this entire thing has shifted. So the number 1 pick in the 2017 draft now wants out of Cleveland. So you heard the news today. What was your reaction?
Yeah, we broke it. I mean, you not broke it, but we saw people breaking it like you, and we had to talk about it on our Fox show. And the first thought was like, well, that's not surprising at all. About time. In fact, I would want out of Cleveland too. Like, it was one of those things where you see the news and you hear the news and you hear about all the backstory, but then he actually like writes a very nice like letter, which you posted and so many other people did, and you read it and you're like, all right, like from the thing that stood out to me was Cleveland to Canton. The dude wants to win. Like, you say all those things and you have 1 playoff win in 8 seasons in Cleveland. Your 2023 Defense Player of the Year. Stats can only accumulate so much till you just are so sick and tired of losing, and that's what Cleveland's been doing.
Well, the statement said, while I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. Of course, the Cleveland to Canton line draws attention because Andrew Berry said that about Garrett twice in January when discussing the team's plans to keep Garrett, right? So all of this is very much orchestrated. Okay, so obviously dropped the week of the Super Bowl where we are all going to be talking.
Monday. It's the week of the Super Bowl. Like, come on.
Chase, when I tell you there's nothing going on outside of the coaching cycle, there is zero going on. So this was a bombshell and it's going to get tons of attention. So look, the Browns, as I mentioned, they knew this was coming down the pipeline, and they were informed this morning that they were going to go public with it, which is, what we saw happen. And I spoke to some people around the league about it, and somebody even in Cleveland, in response to how they're taking the seriousness of it. And their response was essentially, if he's going public like this, he is serious about this. This isn't just a game to get another contract. This isn't a wink, little move of I'm unhappy. Because look, we saw in San Francisco, right? We saw Deebo Samuel want out. Publicly, he came out and said he wanted to trade. Yeah. He stayed. Brandon Ayuk came out and publicly said, I want to trade. They did some work. We reported on it, right? He stayed. So just because you go public doesn't mean it's definitely going to happen. But at the same time, I think a player of this caliber being this disgruntled and this angry, I think the Cleveland Browns know that they've got a mess on their hands here.
It almost seems to me, and you probably know more about it than I do, but when you go public and you're this big of a star player, last year, Defense Player of the Year, right? Like one of the premier pass rushers at the premier position in all the NFL besides quarterback. When you go public with this, you mean business. Like in my opinion, there's no way that they're going to end up back together. And quite honestly, he almost has all the power, right? Only a $19 million cap hit next year, I believe, something along those lines. He's going to be in line for an extension, so this will be a trade and extend is what I'm thinking. But it's almost like he could pick his own team. And you look at those teams that need pass rush help, that can fit them under the cap, that can sign them to an extension, that can finagle the cap space in certain teams, and there's a lot of really good teams out there, to be honest with you.
No, there are, and I think you have to consider a couple things. One, you're right. He's going to want a new contract, right? If a team that's going to trade for him, not only is it going to be a new contract, it's going to be a contract that's going to pay him the most at that position, the highest of a non-quarterback,
wow.
right? So this isn't going to be some friendly little deal he's going to do with a new team. He wants to be the highest paid at his position, and rightfully so. Yep. So you have to consider that when we're trying to piece together, okay, who are going to be the teams. Before we get into the teams, though, Chase, I want to let you know that the Cleveland Browns are standing by what they said last week, which is we are not trading Myles Garrett. In fact, I reached out to them this morning, and it was the same thing of just this, we are not moving on this. We're not even going to entertain phone calls.
That's ridiculous. Like, I get it, and I would have that stance too, but as soon as someone offers you 2 1s or a 1 and 2 2s, you're going to move on from the player. In my opinion, this is a full-on rebuild in Cleveland. Deshaun Watson probably not playing this year, depending on how he recovers, that whole guaranteed money. I think this was sort of writing on the wall for Myles Garrett when they signed Deshaun Watson, and the Deshaun Watson never panned out. I bet Myles Garrett, and I can't take words out of his mouth, but I'm thinking from a star player standpoint, probably what he's saying is like, man, we got the Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans in 2019. That was the only piece that was missing. We let go of Baker. Okay, he wasn't the thing. We got some really good offensive pieces. We have a 2-time coach of the year. We have a killer defense with Schwartz, like all this stuff. And this is our year. They made the playoffs with Joe Flacco. You know what I mean? And he sees the writing on the wall. Why would you waste any more good years of your career? And quite honestly, this is a chance for Cleveland to tear it all up and to start over, because you're going to have a new quarterback. You're going to, like, I get that he's a building block piece, but you almost have to give in to this, because it's just, there's no way the player wants to be back with you.
Well, let's say that there is a world where the Browns think they could keep him. What could an organization do?
Nothing. As soon as you go public and you're a star player, you are all is gone, good as out. And I was talking to Shady McCoy, who's a superstar, who's been traded in his prime from the Philadelphia Eagles to the Buffalo Bills. And he said, look, I didn't want to be traded, but I didn't have a choice. Like at the same time, he's like, all right, Chip Kelly and me didn't really see along. And then that's when it was like, okay, hey, let's just move on. And it's different, but it's the same because they're star players. Star players have so much more power over the locker room. Like, he's supposed to be, and he is the leader of that team. As soon as the leader, your stud player, your Hall of Fame player, wants out, there's no mending fences. As soon as he went public, he's good as gone, in my opinion, Diana.
Yeah. All right, so then what would it look like if a team were able to get him? I reached out to a few GMs around the league who were all paying close attention to this, and I'm sure a lot of them probably already reaching out to Andrew Berry to see how serious they are about not moving him. Yeah. So just trying to get a feel for what he could go for. I had one GM say a 1 and a 2, a 1 and 2 threes, maybe throw a player in there. Seems like the most logical thing. That was the most common answer I did get today in terms of what it would cost. I do think that they could maybe squeeze another team for slightly more for a team that is close to winning, because that's another factor in this. Myles wants to play for a contender, or at least somebody that is close to contending.
No doubt.
So it kind of killed my Raiders idea. It wasn't my idea, actually. It was a GM who said the Raiders should consider trading for Myles Garrett to pair him up with Max Crosby, right? Like, what better way to take down Patrick Mahomes than that way?
Yeah.
Like, there's your answer, but I doubt that that's going to happen.
So what you're saying is a little less than like what Khalil, because I was with Khalil Mack when he got traded at 27 years old to the Chicago Bears. We gave up a ton. But what you're saying, it's probably Myles is 29. It's probably going to be like a little bit less than what Khalil Mack garnered. Because I'm trying to like draw comparisons and comps on this situation because they're both really freaking good pass rushers.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. A 1 and a 2 and maybe a late round pick or something. I mean, that's still really expensive for GMs.
So there's no permanent or definite timeline for stuff like this, but I can tell you that most teams want to get this type of trade done before the new league year, right? So that's in about 4 weeks.
March 18th, right?
So I think we're going to see some action here over the
So
next
you think it's going to
month.
happen between now and the new start of the new league
I
year?
think if a trade does happen, if the Browns decide, okay, we have no choice here, or they get some blow me away offer, even though they're saying they're not doing this.
That's just saying offer me more.
Correct. Offer me more. Because most teams want to figure out what they're doing in free agency, draft, all
Makes
these,
sense.
Look, that's the ideal situation for a team, but what happens if they don't trade him and it's training camp now? Then you have to deal with this headache where he's not showing up, and we've seen this story before where a player just chooses not to be around, and it just becomes another distraction.
That's why you're going to trade him.
And this is what Cleveland does not want to deal with as they're trying to navigate and really steer the ship in a direction in the positive, because what we've seen, it's they've been slaughtered really in the last since they traded for Deshaun Watson.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think, to the best of your knowledge, that if Deshaun Watson, we knew at the time of all the hiring cycles of the head coaches this year and the firing cycles, right? Black Monday, whatever you call it, that Deshaun Watson was not going to be the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns moving forward because of his re-injury right this year, and that Myles Garrett was not going to be the premier player still in that team? Does Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski survive? Are they still the coach to lead this, and GM to lead this rebuild if both of those guys were gone?
Yeah, I think that's what ownership decided, that they were going to stick with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski because he has that belief, right? Because I understand what you're saying, that Myles Garrett is such a big piece of this, and the idea of losing him, they really have to start this thing over. But I think they're already there in their minds of how we can fix some of these issues, which is why I think they're going to probably go quarterback in the draft to try to fix that position.
Really? Hold on. You just blew my socks off. Quarterback at 2 in the draft?
I don't know if it's
You said
definite.
it so nonchalantly.
I just think it makes sense. I think all the signs are pointing to that. Maybe not even 1, maybe even 2 in this draft, knowing that that's the position that they have to get right. The Deshaun Watson thing is not working out. They're sort of ripping the Band-Aid while also just letting Deshaun sit there. I'm not really sure.
If Shador goes 2, because I don't think the Titans are going to pick Shador. Maybe. I don't know.
What do you think the Titans are going to do?
I think they're going to draft Abdul Carter. He's the only true generational premier player, in my opinion. I know they need a quarterback. I get that. But if you're Shador, before we move on to the teams, because I want to hear your teams, if you're Shador and Dion and you get drafted to Cleveland, what do you do? Do you allow it? Do you go with it? Do you force your way out? Because everyone knows that's where quarterbacks go to die, other than Baker Mayfield. But it's true.
Well, Andrew Berry said that he doesn't foresee that happening.
Of course he has to say that.
Well, maybe he back-channeled it already and talked to Dion and was like, you could come here. And
I just think it's a fascinating situation, because Dion's already been talking about that he wants to be involved with his kids' recruitment, draft, and we all know what happened with the Manning, like Eli, and I don't know. It's a fascinating situation, and for some reason, this Myles Garrett news is like the catalyst of everything. Like in my head, well, if it's a rebuild, they need a quarterback. So maybe what about Travis Hunter, who can play both ways? But then Travis Hunter's not good good enough because he didn't have a quarterback that can throw the ball. Like, so all this stuff. It's crazy.
Well, we'll see if Andrew Berry can come up with a way to make Myles Garrett happy, possibly by giving him a contract with tons of guaranteed money, control. Like, what could a player?
It's not. He's done. He's so sick and tired of losing. You think Myles Garrett? Oh, he's going to walk into the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, when he's done. You think and going into his 9th season, I believe, does he want to be a part of a full rebuild again? No, I'm not saying he's going to take a hometown discount or anywhere like that. He's still going to get paid because he's worth what he's worth. At some point, you just got to move on. Like, you're just one of those things, like, just so sick and tired of losing. I think playing for a contender and what he said in his message is so important to him.
Yeah.
I just don't see there's a way back to Cleveland.
The youngest player to reach 100 career sacks and the first player to record 14 or more sacks in 4 consecutive seasons. He's obviously an unbelievable stud who does not want to waste his talent and probably has seen other players in the NFL leave one place where they were miserable, i.e. Saquon Barkley, who's now playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday. And
Give me 2 teams on where he goes.
Well, I think the things that you have to consider, as I mentioned before, is going to be a team that has the money to give him a contract like that, a team that can be contending, and I do think a 4-3 would probably have to be something that they can consider, right? Something, the scheme in front is going to be part of this. Why not the Chargers? Why not the Commanders?
It's a great pick because Khalil, if they get him maybe for one more year, pairing with him and Bosa. But I don't know if Khalil is like he's playing back. Where is he going to land in free agency? Especially if they don't think they're going to sign Khalil back. Makes a lot of sense. They have money. What about? I mean, Brett Veach to me and the Chiefs. I retweeted you and I was like Chiefs, like just because it's probably not going to happen. But it's so intriguing because the Chiefs ranked 18th in sacks this year, 4th in pressure percentage in defense front. You would say that's probably other than Chris Jones. Now, Karlaftis had 3 sacks in the championship game, but other than Chris Jones, sort of not the strength of their team defensively. You pair him with Chris Jones. Now, you got to make it work from a money-wise, but, I mean, this is sort of the Patrick Mahomes type thing where you look at his contract, it's a baseball contract. He's very underpaid compared to what some of these guys are, and this is exactly what Tom Brady did toward the middle end of his career. Was he took less money. Now I think he was getting paid other ways, but that's another podcast. But it's something like that where you could pair those two together and the Chiefs could just go for 4, 5, and 6 speed, maybe.
What about the Eagles? Just keep loading up.
Oh, Howie. Trade everyone on that O-line except Jalen Carter and put Jalen Carter and Myles Garrett together.
I still like the Commanders idea, right? Because we know that they traded away Chase Young, Montez Sweat, and just adding Garrett would just accelerate that rebuild that they're doing. We saw what their biggest problem was, right? Defense.
That's a good one.
This is where they need to get better. So we will see where this goes, or if we will look back on this and be like, wow, we wasted that Monday Super Bowl week talking about where Myles Garrett would go when he wound up staying in Cleveland. But according to Chase, who knows all when it comes to these kind of things, see you later, Myles Garrett in Cleveland.
But I just can't imagine.
This is why I love doing the show with you, because you just say and tell me exactly how you feel about it. When we get back, my good friend Mike Silver joins me here on set on Radio Row. We're going to talk all things Super Bowl. We'll be right back. All right, back here on Scoop City, day 1 here on Radio Row, and we thought we would have a Super Bowl superstar. No, this is not Saquon Barkley. No, this isn't Patrick Mahomes. This is the Athletics, Mike Silver. Mike, Super Bowl number 49 for you? What is this?
Wow. Okay, I know I'm old, but you're just trying to date me. No, I wasn't like the Doogie Howser, and dating myself again. I wasn't like covering the Super Bowl as a 6-year-old. But listen, New Orleans Super Bowls are different from other Super Bowls, and something I've known for a long time. I think you started to understand that last night when we did the pre-interview production meeting of Scoop City, as it were. You can walk everywhere. It's a very festive city, can handle the nightlife. It's a perfect spot. And music and revelry abounds.
We don't lie to our Scoop City viewers and listeners. So when you say production meeting for the show, what you mean is eating oysters and having wonderful cocktails in a city that basically wherever you go eat it's good. It's hard to have a bad meal in New Orleans, which makes it hard to decide where you want to eat.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great American city with its own distinctive cuisine and culture, and live music is such an integral part of what New Orleans is. And I know that you enjoyed our live music interludes last night.
How could you not? But what I do love about New Orleans is really early in the morning when it's quiet and you walk around. And right now, there's people here, like I've seen tons of Eagles fans already. I'm interested to see the type of Chiefs presence that will eventually be showing up here. But let's just call it the day one observation from me. I'm seeing way more Philadelphia than I am Kansas City.
I think that's understandable. They were here 2 years ago, but Philadelphia is a huge, passionate market. Nothing was promised. They do not have a Patrick Mahomes where they're sitting there going, we're going every year. Now maybe they will keep going, but it's a different way. They have to just mash people. The Chiefs, meanwhile, it's like, oh yeah, we go to the Super Bowl every year. We have Patrick Mahomes. Now think about for a second an alternate universe where a Detroit-Buffalo Super Bowl was happening.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like you've got a lot of bucket list people who are like, I can't believe that, this is happening. Put a second mortgage on the house. Let's do the whole week. So we didn't get that. But listen, it's not hard if you've ever been to New Orleans to convince yourself, hey, my team's in the Super Bowl, we should go down there.
Let's just make this thing work.
Even if you don't go to the game, you might just want to be part of it.
Exactly. So it's definitely going to pick up, even though already you're starting to feel, I know it's just the first day, but you have the Chiefs and the Eagles both at their hotels. I saw them earlier this morning. They're just getting settled as they've got media night on Monday night, and of course we'll get tons of storylines. But I know that you're going to be digging on a lot of different topics this week outside of just the big NFL news cycle, which we'll touch on, but just from your experience when you're covering teams in a Super Bowl and everything is being picked apart and dove into just to discover more and more, how do you approach the week? What's the best way to get the best type of stories?
Such a great question. So all those years I did the game story for Sports Illustrated, which was a massive responsibility, stayed up all night to write it, had to be different, came out 3 days later. People save it, it was a different era. And I had an incredible team of people, Peter King, Dr. Z, Jeff Chadia, Josh Elliott, helping me and gather, but in the end, you're on your own, and so you are looking for anything different. But always, to me, you were telling not just the story of that game and that team, but that season. And I kind of always tried to step above a little bit. I'll be a little more granular now, but I think two things. One, and you know this, we don't lose sight of the fact that this is the convention of pro football. It's not just a football game. So, for example, this morning, there was a massive story in the NFL that dropped, courtesy of my friend Dianna Russini. I got to see it happen. I was texting her to ask about coffee or something super important, and she was like, hey, hold on, have to deal with one thing. And that one thing was Myles Garrett reaching out basically and saying, I asked the Cleveland Browns to trade me. So, for example, we have to be mindful that it's not just about the Chiefs and the Eagles this week. The second thing I would say is, and I'll bring up another journalist that we love, Jeff Darlington. I remember earlier in his career when he was a reporter covering the Dolphins, a lot of people would view media day at the time, now media night, as this cliche and it's funny and people dress up. And Jeff went and stood at Santonio Holmes' little podium in a game where he would make an iconic catch that we all remember to beat the Cardinals, and asked him questions and got Santonio Holmes publicly to talk about having dealt drugs in South Florida as a kid to make it, help his family make ends meet. And it was a really gripping story. And the lesson to me was, don't get caught up in the hype and the weirdness of it. There's journalism to be done, and it was just really cool to see Jeff take that opportunity to get a great story.
I know after the AFC Championship game, you wrote a great story just about what Patrick Mahomes is like in these big moments and what really separates him. We talked about it on the show. I actually read that quote that Matt Nagy shared with you, a text that he sent his wife about the type of almost superpower that Patrick Mahomes turns into in this moment. Just from being around him in that locker room after the game, what was your observation about Patrick?
I mean, I I'll never forget the first time I met him. It was after that crazy Rams-Chiefs Thursday night game that got relocated from Mexico, and I think it was 54 to 51, 50, some crazy. I think you remember that game. It was a crazy Monday night game.
It was a Monday night game. Yep.
And Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes out of their minds, and in the end, the Rams won. And I remember talking to Patrick in that little tunnel, and he was like, "Oh man, I thought I had that last one," and he was so chill, and I was like, "This is Patrick Mahomes." I've been around all the legendary quarterbacks, starting with the Montana Elway Marino crew, and they all have auras, but Patrick just was. I thought just the ability to have it not feel too big is like one of his superpowers. So Patrick was how I expected, really happy, but not ahead of himself. The Matt Nagy thing's interesting because to so many people right now, Patrick Mahomes is a villain. He's won too much. He breaks hearts in Buffalo and everywhere else. But to the Chiefs, he is a superhero. And what the text that Matt Nagy sent to his wife the night before the game kind of got into was he's transforming. It's a really cool thing. He's going into this zone, this shell, and we can't really reach it, but I know what he's doing. He's internalizing and getting ready to be a different being on the field. And so because he's so cool, I don't think that translates always to us, but to the people closest to him, it's like, oh, whoa, this is a different thing that's happening when Patrick Mahomes is getting ready to do something epic.
Which, for these coaches who are around him and his teammates and are seeing all these different versions, to me, that just says a lot, that he can still, at this point in his life, kind of give that off like, I'm going 0 dark 30 right now.
And don't you think, like, I just want to do this because we don't do it enough, but you and I are going to do it now. Let's take a deep breath. He has been a starter for 7 seasons. His 2 worst seasons, he lost in overtime in the AFC Championship game. Once to Tom Brady when Dee Ford jumped off sides and he never got the ball. Mm-hmm. Once to Joe Burrow when Lou Anarumo had an incredible scheme against him. Those were his worst. His next worst was he lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady. He's won 3, and this is the 7th. So I don't know that we have ever seen anything like this, and I don't know that we ever will again. Let's just cherish it.
And just say, this is good. We always talk about how maniacal some coaches can be, some organizations top to bottom. And one of my favorite stories over the last few years with the Chiefs playing in the Super Bowl was that in their hotel, they basically reconstruct it and they make it look just like it does at the facility, because Andy wants everyone to just feel like they're back in Kansas City prepping for just another game. Whereas when you're sitting in a hotel all week, you're out of sorts, you don't feel right. Those small details of making sure the coaches' rooms look like the coaches' rooms back in Kansas City.
But it's going to be harder here because I want people to understand, when I talk about how great New Orleans is as a Super Bowl city, one of the things for me that makes it amazing is both teams are staying down in the central business area, and we can walk to both those team hotels. So in a normal Super Bowl city, they're more spread out, and they're not really, like, they weren't on the Strip in Las Vegas, for example.
No, yeah, we had to drive out about 35, take a bus to get to their hotels. They are in the mix.
They are in the middle of it, and so it doesn't mean that,
and it's going to get loud at night.
And listen, I remember a Tuesday in 2002, back then Media Day was on Tuesday. Afterwards, Marshall Faulk, who was, one of the best players in the league, Hall of Fame player, was the star for the Rams who were playing the Patriots, and we were pretty tight, and he said, hey, let's go shopping, and I'm still in like my Media Day clothes, and we did, and then he took me back to see the house where his mother lived, and he's from here, and it was very like journalistically poignant. And then we were like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should like have a drink. It's been a great, And then it was 3:30 a.m. and I was still getting laughed at in my Media Day clothes. And listen, Marshall Faulk knew how to prepare for a Super Bowl. He's a professional, but just because they're getting ready for a game doesn't mean that they're not human beings. And so we're going to shut it down all week. They're in New Orleans. Some guys, it's different now with the cell phone cameras.
I was going to say, I don't think it's the same. And just knowing the Chiefs as well as we do and the way they are disciplined, like, I mean, look, there could be a story that comes out eventually, but I have a hard time believing that both these teams would be stepping out of their hotel room, headed over to, the casino where we'll be playing roulette, hopefully later this week. Although, how funny would that be? Travis just walks up.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it used to be in the NFL, but now we have cell phone cameras and social media, so here we are.
Ruins all the fun. You've made a pretty close study of a few of the quarterbacks who came up short in the playoffs. You spent so much time with Jared Goff. You know him really well. You followed his career tons. You wrote about the case of Josh Allen building for MVP. What are the things that you find most interesting when you're writing about a player that's trying to get over the hump?
It's such a great question because I have such vivid memories of early in my career. I started covering the 49ers in 1989. Joe Montana that year took them to their 4th championship in 9 years. But his backup was Steve Young. 3rd year as his backup of 6. And Steve Young was unbelievable when we saw him play, but he was playing behind the greatest, Joe Montana. And then when Steve Young became the starter when Montana got hurt starting in 91, he was winning passing titles and then MVPs, but he lost to the Cowboys in the playoffs, and it was San Francisco fans were like, we just don't love him like we love Joe. And it took that incredible Super Bowl 29, 6-touchdown record-setting performance with Mike Shanahan as his offensive coordinator. I know it's a great time to mention that my book, The Why Is Everything, gets into that early on in the book. It's about the Shanahan coaching tree. But it is, that was a really formative experience for me. That was my first Super Bowl for Sports Illustrated. And then Marino, who I covered for years and years, is one of the absolute greatest players of all time. His first year, he was like Jaden Daniels. It was like, oh my God, he's taking over the league, but even more. His second year, he got to the Super Bowl, lost to Montana. And everyone's like, oh, well, Marino's going to win 3. And he never got back. And it doesn't diminish the greatness of Dan Marino, but I always wanted that for him. And it's funny because he and Elway were very friendly rivals, and Elway had lost 3 and Marino had lost 1, but they both had to wear that for a long time. But then at the end, I covered Elway winning those 2. And Dan, he was honest with me. He goes, I love John, and I'm so logically happy for him, but it was really hard for me to watch it. So I'm always, Jared Goff in this city, I saw him do an epic thing and come from behind and win the 2018 NFC Championship game as a young player for the Rams, and then didn't have a good Super Bowl against the Patriots, and then was kind of given up for career dead. And then this year it looked like maybe he's going to go back with the Lions. So the struggle continues, but I love that story. And then you look at Josh and Lamar, and it's like, they're so great, it's going to happen. But then again, Burrow's in there, and oh, by the way, Patrick Mahomes just wins every year.
All the time. Well, this was a good we'll call it the appetizer for a week filled of conversations we're going to be having about this game specifically, about other news going around the league. But I wanted to ask you, because when the NBA took over, before we landed in New Orleans, obviously with the big trade with Luka, what was your reaction to that? Only because I know, first of all, I just know how much you love sports, but just how wild of a trade this is. And I know we're all doing the comps, what this could be to. Forget that. Just your reaction to seeing such a big move in the middle of this, at this point.
It was really surprising. And, I grew up a Warrior fan, and then grew up also in Los Angeles with Steve Kerr as my high school writing partner. So I've been very interested in the Warriors, during this run especially. And my sons are very immersed in that. So they didn't like the trade as Warrior fans. And I've explained to them, look, I grew up in LA. Here are some of the players the Lakers didn't develop on their own. They've done that too. But just got somehow, when they were in the prime of their career, got them. They got Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James. So it's just kind of annoying. The Warriors did that once with Kevin Durant, and everyone was like, how dare they? And the Lakers, it's like, oh yeah, we got Luka at 27. So
25
or something. But so my sons are really mad about it, but I actually think there's something else going on there. I just don't think the Mavericks are like, you know what, we're going to go get an older Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
And I think That doesn't mean Luka won't be different for the Lakers, but I think there's something that made them be like, we don't want this for the next 12 years.
You've been doing this long enough to know when
we have our detectors.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, I don't know about that. So hopefully the Athletic can dive in on that story and we can get some more answers.
Great point.
Right. I
really.
think that's right up our alley. So hopefully we'll uncover some of that. So meantime, the NBA was dominating the trade news, and then Myles Garrett starts his Monday with asking for a trade.
I heard that.
And he just. Really, it's timing-wise for them. Like, what a smart play to let the public know about it, because now this is all we're going to be talking about all week long, and we know there's just going to be way more things happening.
It reminded me of when Lamar Jackson dropped his right when Harbaugh and DaCosta
was
were
a
going to
boss move.
talk at the combine.
It was the owners' meeting. I think it was right at the.
No, it was the combine.
It was
press
the
conference,
combine right before he went up to the press
like
conference.
Literally, like 20 minutes
he
before.
He dropped that he
wanted to be traded.
That he wanted to be traded, and then. John had to answer all these questions with just learning. So he had like maybe 40 seconds to think of a great answer. And he did answer it very well. So that was good. But either way, you have answered all of our questions. We have plenty more for you. Make sure you join our YouTube show too. So every day we're going to be live on YouTube.
Definitely.
At 5 o'clock Eastern. We are going to have tons of guests just like coming through and hanging out. So I hope you can come by because I know you're going to be spending the next few days digging on some of these stories and finding things that no one else on this planet will discover. And so I want you to come back and report to us here in Scoop City.
I would love to, and I got to be honest. We're setting the bar very high. Here on
starting
Monday.
with the biggest guest here in New Orleans. That's how we do it here on the Scooper.
We are here to lay down a marker.
And we have done that. Mike, thanks so much for hanging out. We will be right back. Well, it is our favorite segment here on Scoop City, Uncrustables, which I have to tell you, when we're doing this show and I'm sitting in my office back in New Jersey, Uncrustables always sound delicious. They don't sound so great here in New Orleans. Just knowing the options I have here,
a lot of good food.
Chase, I had dinner on Sunday night and I was doing the most annoying thing, but I couldn't help myself. I was making these moaning sounds when I was biting the food, like when I was eating it, because it was so good. Like, I haven't had food like this in trust me, you should ask the people I was having dinner with. They were like, what are you doing over there?
Where'd you eat at?
I'm like, I'm just enjoying Chuman. It was incredible. Everything.
Yeah,
and I even ordered things I don't
full
eat.
of cream and butter.
Yes.
And just, I mean, it is unbelievable. Very, very rich, very heavy, very delicious food.
You'll be so proud of me. I signed up for Orange Theory for tomorrow. How about that?
Wait, at Super Bowl?
Yes.
Good for you.
Right there. That's called discipline.
Yo, we need to bring Scoop City in one of our photogs to a class, and I'll do one with you. And we'll do a one in a class.
Chase, I would live for that. Like, that is my dream scenario, because I obviously am starving for competition, and while the women in my class are fantastic usually and they push me, I want to be intense, right? I have to hold back a little bit because I don't want to be weird. I feel like if it's me and
you're an athlete, you're a competitor.
Correct. Like, you'll be on the treadmill next to me and I'll be like, let's go, weakling.
You might. Honestly, there's a good chance you're in better shape than I am right now. I'm not going to lie.
Well, after this trip, I don't know, but I'm going to try to get these workouts in. I think it's just good for the overall mental health. A lot of water, a lot of workouts, and the rest of it is just a big grind here. But
19 martinis, did you forget about that?
We'll be doing that together when we have dinner on Friday, baby. All right, so Uncrustables playoff style, because we haven't done this segment in a few weeks, and I just feel like now that the Super Bowl's here, we can take a little time to reflect on some of the most incredible moments from the playoffs and some that we were like, we're going to take an Uncrustable away from you. So I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to start off with probably the most important player for the Philadelphia Eagles coming up this Sunday. The first touch against the Commanders, to me, I would like to give him an Uncrustable. I mean, it's so everyone watching the game knew Saquon would get the ball, yet he still got the ball, and it just opened up and just went crazy. So to me, I'm going to lead off with one of my favorite memories of this playoffs, which was just Saquon taking it off.
I like that. I'm going on the other side of the football for the coordinator, Vic Fangio. I was with Vic, glad that he's in the Super Bowl, gets a chance to win one. The dude has done unbelievable things with a really young defensive line, really young secondary. Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Jalen Carter, all the Georgia boys up there. I mean, did we forget what he does at linebacker with Zach Bond, Defensive Player of the Year finalist? Like, they signed up for $1.5 million, and Vic Fangio said, I can put you right here. I can have you call the defense. And now all of a sudden you're defensive player of the year. I think Vic Fangio has done an outstanding job all year long.
Well, speaking of defense, how about the Rams get misplaced, right, because of the LA Fires? They've got to go play their game against the Minnesota Vikings out in Arizona. And Sam Darnold is sacked 9 times with Aaron Donald watching on. To me, that deserves an Uncrustable for just overcoming what I think a lot of people thought was just going to be a season for the Rams that would just be a wash. And those guys fought. We give Sean McVay all that love every single show because he deserves it for the kind of coaching he's done every season with trying to make the best of it. Now, this season, they've had to make the most of it. They've got some money to spend in this upcoming offseason. I think the Rams are going to be back next year. We'll see what they do with Matthew Stafford, right? So Robert Mays and I just talked about this, whether or not
They got to redo his deal, right?
Yeah, they do, and he's gonna. They're gonna have to put some sprinkles on top of that to make him
Yeah,
happy.
because they paid 40 last year. What, 45, 50 this year?
But do the Rams want to pay that, or do you think Sean McVay's gonna want to go and move on to maybe, I don't know, Sam Darnold for cheaper?
That's so funny and crazy because I literally was just going to say I'm taking away an Uncrustable from our guy Sam Darnold. Love the way he played, just for his playoff performance. Love the way he played all season long. 4,200 passing yards, 35 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Really, really career year. Set himself up to get paid a lot of money. Life-changing money, in my opinion, because he really never had that big second deal. But in the 2 biggest games of the year, you lay an egg, right? The Detroit Lions one, they could have been the 1 seed. And then the playoff game, you get sacked, 9 times? I don't think you lost some money, but you lost some leverage. Got to take one away from Sam Darnold.
All right, I'm going to take an Uncrustable away, too, for the drops. The Mark Andrews drop that cost them the game, and the Dalton Kincaid drop for the Buffalo Bills. We had 2 monster drops in these playoffs that cost their team some potential Super Bowl appearances here. So taking those Uncrustables away. Can you finish positive for me? Because I want to end the show with a yummy sandwich.
Usually I never take any Uncrustables away, but I got to take another one away. I
Well,
can't
but
end
you can't go
positive.
half-
It's weird. This is the first time I've ever done it.
All right.
It's the first time I've ever done it. Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's the biggest, one of the biggest storylines. Can he get it done? Can he do enough? He did, but it just wasn't enough in the first half. So just for the first half of that game, I'm taking away, I guess I'll take away half an Uncrustable. So you still get to eat a half for your second half performance. So just one of those things where I honestly hate it for the guy, but I hate it for us too, because now we got to talk about it all offseason again, because we're going to continue talking. Lamar Jackson can't get over the hump. Lamar Jackson can't do this. Lamar Jackson can't win in the playoffs. He's a 2-time MVP. He's only been to 1 AFC. It's just like, ugh. So you get half of an Uncrustable taken away, dude.
Even though I don't want to eat it here because I prefer the food in New Orleans, I'm going to give myself an Uncrustable for this playoffs for allowing Kevin to attend every single Eagles home game while I watched our children, despite the fact that it is my job to be an NFL reporter
It is your
watch
job to be a
the
reporter.
games, just so he can enjoy this magical run. He will not be attending this Super Bowl. He'll be watching it from home.
What a good wife.
But yeah, so I deserve that and some roses. So, all right, that'll do it for us here on Scoop City. The next time you hear Chase and I's voice together, we will be sitting next to one another here on Radio Row, where I can promise you it will be a zoo here, especially when we record. So I hope you guys tune in to us next time, and we will see you soon.
Bye, guys. Tell me next time.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.